We have NFTs, quick cash grabs, blatant ripoffs, unfinished projects, and dozens of low-effort games coming out each year, and all of that is cause for concern. It's been a hot minute since I've released any reaction-style video, and I know you all love to hear my negative takes, so today I'll be giving you some of my thoughts on a topic brought up by Koramora a few weeks ago. I'll be talking a bit about their question from their video, why do cozy games suck? That's the question. If you haven't watched that video, it's a really good video about the recent state of cozy gaming from a perspective that I mostly agree with, even if I have differing opinions on many of the games that they referenced within it. Now, I don't want to beat down on too many of the same topics that Koramora covers, but I guess I do need to give some basic starting points for this video. In 2016, Concerned Ape released a hit game that would change the landscape of cozy gaming for the next decade. Stardew Valley. If you didn't know, Stardew Valley is basically one man's attempt to make a better, more modern version of the old Harvest Moon games, and it was released in a landscape where very few farming sim games were actually released. Now, I'll be clear, it wasn't the first game of this style trying to remake the Harvest Moon feeling that was released. Both Wild Season and Melting Hearts were released at about the same time with similar inspirations, and World's Dawn was another one that released before it that was focused more on the social aspect of the Harvest Moon games rather than the farming. The question then becomes, why did Stardew Valley succeed to the extent that it did, where these other games mostly didn't? For most of them, the answer is pretty simple. Scope and polish. The devs either tried to do more than they could handle, or the games were very clunky, unwieldy, or had some other small issues surrounding them that made them difficult to enjoy. Stardew Valley, on the other hand, had 4 years set aside for development, and a ton of revisions were made to the game to get it where it was at launch. Concerned Ape knew what he wanted the game to be, and he focused on all of those points really well, trying to improve everything from the past games. And that's why Stardew Valley succeeded as well as it did. Polish, hard work, and a landscape where the competition was basically 3 other indie games. Would that really work today? Well, I'm sorry to say this, but since 2020, I highly doubt that you could really do the same thing with nearly the same level of success. Why? Because Animal Crossing exploded. You can say what you want about Animal Crossing New Horizons. I personally feel like it's easily the worst Animal Crossing game to be released yet, but you can't argue that it didn't sell extremely well. Now, if you want to know my full thoughts on New Horizons, we'll talk a little bit more about it later. I might make a more comprehensive video in the future, but it likely won't be anything you haven't heard before. I mean, sure, the stars aligned with the pandemic and the lockdowns, but Animal Crossing has currently sold over 42 million units to date, at least according to Statista, and that has completely changed everything for both the cozy gaming and the farming gaming genre. To go back to Stardew Valley, it released in a realm of 3 other games of a similar style between 2006 and 2016. And I want to be clear, these are all just numbers from Steam, nowhere else. So I'm being very careful there because that was the easiest place to find information. So 3 other games, 4 total games between 2006 and 2016. Now, between 2017 and 2019, that number jumped to over 20 games. And these games take time to make, obviously. And since Animal Crossing, well, I didn't count, but my tracker has 48 games per page with over 10 pages of games in that time span. And sure, if we take the games, we can probably filter out like half of them in order to fit our criteria of what a farming sim is, but that's still over a 10 times growth in game releases just in the matter of a couple of years. I'd like to remind you, again, these are all just Steam games. So now you have a bit of the history needed for, well, my beginning of this discussion, really. And that's just that the scale of the number of releases today is absolutely astounding. So I guess the question, why do cozy games suck today? We can answer it really quickly Because in my mind, part of the answer is right there. There's just so many of them being released now. And just due to the sheer number of games that are releasing, we should expect a massive increase in the number of both flops and busts. I mean, do you all remember the MMO boom, the FPS boom, the MOBA boom? All of these time periods in gaming saw a massive increase in the number of games in their genres. Does anyone remember Dead Island Epidemic? These time periods also saw some of the best games in those genres release, but they also brought with them a slew of utterly terrible games that arguably never should have been made. All of these things are very easy to see in hindsight, but we're also currently squarely in the middle of a cozy game boom that won't die down until, well, the sales do. I do want to be absolutely clear about some things here. I am not saying that every game today is bad. Every cozy game is awful. We've actually mostly only been looking at the things from, well, the farming sim side of things, because that's probably the easiest place that I could actually find numbers. Just this sheer number of games isn't even the only thing that I want to look at, because with this increased number of games also comes an increased number of bad actors. Now, if you've been to this channel before, you'll know that the farming sim genre in particular has seen an increase in the number of these bad actors coming into the space. Moonfrost is an NFT scam game that'll be coming out, and Cornucopia is literally just a gambling game for children that's already released. And both of them are masking themselves behind the label that Stardew Valley has given us, and also the growth that Animal Crossing has shown. And that doesn't even count developers who have been releasing games in blatantly unfinished states, or games that are never going to get finished, or just other low effort trends in the gaming space in general. And honestly, I only expect these to get worse over the next few years, because I fully expect more and more scammers to realize that the cozy game space isn't really typically made up of the most technically savvy or gaming aware consumers. I mean, they didn't live through the armor trimming or the money doubling of yesteryear. And with a new mark in their sights, we're getting there. But as much as I'd like to say that everything bad in the cozy game genre and farming sim genre is just bad actors trying to take everything they can, that also wouldn't be the truth. If we expand our games beyond just cozy games for a minute, stick with me, we are currently living in a gaming landscape where both developers and publishers are too afraid to actually try anything new or different, either because of greed or a massive fear of failure. I mean, games do cost so much more today to make than they did in the past, so failure is a bigger risk. And nowhere could this be seen more clearly with the recent problems with Creative Assembly. If you didn't know, they are the creators of the Total War series and have come under fire over the last week because, well, they refuse to make any games with new additions, or update their systems, or even just give features to their current games that were present in some of their games over 10 years ago. They've also basically attacked their community and sort of made a mess of it, but that's beyond the scope of this discussion. And sadly, this isn't really just a problem. This fear of failure, this reluctance to try anything that hasn't been done before, this isn't just a problem with this one studio. It's present throughout the industry right now. This has started to spread to cozy games as well, as many of them have started to feel just as stagnant as other games, with many of them refusing to do what made Stardew Valley stand out before it. Now, many of your modern cozy games have tried to find a way to shoehorn in mechanics from other games, specifically farming. It's why most of them are farming. But they don't really take the time to polish these up or drastically add or improve to them. They're just forgotten mechanics, or even learn from their shortcomings in most cases, to, really make their game stand up on its own 2 feet, really have its place. This leads to many of our current games that are releasing either feeling like cheap ripoffs of another game, or just makes them feel samey. I mean, think of it like this. What did Fae Farm do that Sunhaven didn't? How did it actually justify its place within the broader genre of farming and cozy games? Now, you can make some small arguments there, but I don't think that they stood that far apart. I'm just going to leave that thought there for a bit to talk about something tangentially related. Now, in their video, Koramora, who I will remind you is the reason we're talking about this, they made the original video, go watch it at some point. They brought up the idea of challenges, goals, or a reason to play being something that's missing from a lot of cozy games, especially newer cozy games today, where everything just feels very, let's just say, sanitary. They also brought up the game A Little to the Left, which is definitely a game that fits into the cozy genre in its own way, even if I disagree with it being a good puzzle game. And that point is going to become important real quick. If you don't know, one of the types of cozy games that I tend to play quite often, especially compared to others, are puzzle games. For example, recently I beat Freshly Frosted. Now, most of these games aren't really that taxing or even really new in their scope, and I definitely understand that they're not for everyone. But one of the big reasons that I enjoy playing puzzle games is that they can make me feel like an absolute genius one moment or an absolute idiot the next, and they can do this all in one fell swoop. This is all done by making puzzles that can be easily understood and have logical solutions to them. So even when I'm failing, I know the answer to the puzzle is right in front of me. I just need to find it. And, well, that's one of my favorite feelings when it comes to puzzle games. And that's also where I think A Little to the Left fell flat to me. You see, too many of their solutions in that game just seem completely random at any given point that I really failed to bring that connection to it. And it's this struggle to find that logical connection, that thing that I'm actually striving for, that I feel is also missing from many of these cozy games. So I do agree with Koramora. Now, this struggle was found in Stardew Valley in, well, multiple ways. It was added in multiple ways. The game had money and expansions at the start. You can grow your house, things like that. They had the community bundle or Joja Mart in the mid to late game. And they also had a sort of final score for your save file in the form of your grandfather rating you. On top of this, you also had tool progression, which actually had a bit of a risk reward system to it, which I know many players hate, but honestly, handing over your tools for a few days was actually probably a really good way of establishing a connection to them. And to explain that, if you've ever had to think about whether to turn over your watering can for a few days or your pickaxe, axe, whatever, and you felt something about making that choice, it was a hard decision, you felt bad about it, then congratulations. You've just interacted with the game on an emotional level. It's left an actual mark on you. Now, that isn't to say that all of these interactions, all of these challenges, these things that are supposed to tie you to the game need to be negative in their creation. There needs to be something to make your progress or your work memorable, to allow you to connect with it, whether it's like hard effort, sacrifice, time, or some challenge. And I want to bring this right back to games justifying their place within the genre. Specifically, I want to look at Animal Crossing and another upcoming game that I've recently talked about, Chill Town. And I'm sorry to say this, I will be very, very harsh on this game. So if you like Chill Town, I'm sorry. But on the surface, it just seems like a watered down, somewhat poorly made version of New Horizons. My words, not theirs. But, and this is the big part, the developers of Chill Town don't really seem to understand what made New Horizons both good and bad within its space, in the genre, within its community. They haven't really looked at the upbringing of the series to see how they can make and improve their own version of the New Horizons game. Instead, they're just marching right down the same road with a much smaller budget, a much smaller following, and no franchise history to speak of. And if you aren't aware, New Horizons has a few downfalls within its area, and this is where we'll talk about some of the things I don't like really quick. They've basically abandoned the communication game standpoint that it has, dropped the entirety of the mid to end game, and character personality and growth are basically out of the window. And this was all done in the name of crafting and making your own perfect little island rather than sharing the space with the NPCs that you happen to live with. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were making a game to try to compete with Animal Crossing, those would be the areas that I would look at if I wanted to compete with it, because that's the current gap in the market. By not learning from these past games, Showtown is currently looking to force itself into head-to-head competition with the biggest player in the cozy game space, while willingly having no advantages. It's not justifying its place within the genre at all. It's not really bringing anything new to the table. It's simply copying and hoping. And sadly, it's not the only example of this within cozy games. When developers fail to realize either the market that exists for their game or the need to actually improve upon past games, then sadly the entire scene will start to stagnate. Both the farming, sim, and cozy game genre have gotten to this level of popularity mostly because one person decided they wanted to make a better version of a game from the SNES era and didn't stop until it was, well done in their eyes. So why do the last few years feel like everyone is just regressing? And I guess this is really the final answer that I have to that question of why do cozy games suck? They suck because of the current state of gaming. Publishers don't want to risk anything to create something new. Developers are too scared to really try to make new experiences, and people seem to cling to how mechanics have been done rather than improving them and making them better. And sure, there are some games that do go above and beyond within the genre, but they're no longer anywhere near the majority. And this isn't something unique to cozy games, but due to both the game's technical levels and the audience, it is something that is much easier to spot. If you made it this far into the video, please tell me about your favorite type of pancakes, because I grew up with blueberry pancakes and they were lovely. I loved them. Here are the people that make this video possible. I massively respect all of them. I'm sorry that my opinions basically lined up with Koramora's. I tried to expand a little bit on why I thought certain things or why certain things were more important to me. Hopefully it was worth watching both. Please subscribe if you liked the video. I'm really trying to work my way up to 1,000 subscribers right now. Here's my past negative ranting reaction video to, well, another video claiming to tell people why MMO players hated the game Palia. Thank you for watching.